This story comes from a woman who declared divorce due to her mother-in-law, who nitpicks over unreasonable things, and her husband who takes his mother's side. She boldly told her husband that she's going to divorce because his mother is crazy. What could have happened? Let's find out together. Please subscribe and like our channel.
Hello. I am a woman in my late 30s with a child attending kindergarten. I cannot understand why my mother-in-law has been so upset with our late marriage. Shouldn't she celebrate and say good things about her old bachelor son finally getting married? For some reason, I, as her daughter-in-law, seemed to irritate her, and she seemed frustrated that she could not criticize my every move. No one pointed out her behavior, so it seemed to get worse. I wished my husband would argue with her, but he actually sided with his mother. So of course, she became even more arrogant. I guess she lacks judgment. Just because someone supports you doesn't mean you should continue to do wrong. Right? About 6 months into our marriage, there was a wedding of my husband's cousin. I was pregnant, and the wedding venue was too far away for me to attend. My husband also couldn't go. So we asked my mother-in-law to give the congratulatory money on our behalf. We transferred the money to her account, and at that point, I became a shameless daughter-in-law. My mother-in-law's argument was absurd. She said it was rude to transfer money directly to an adult's account. She asked where I learned such behavior, and threatened that if I behaved like that one more time, she would punish me harshly. I explained that I was pregnant and my husband was busy, but my words were simply considered talk back. My mother-in-law then said that if I wanted her to run errands for me, I should have transferred more money, not just the 100,000 won for the congratulatory gift. I was puzzled by her incomprehensible remarks and felt overwhelmed. Her anger and words made me think I was in the wrong. So when she talked about the parts she was upset about, I apologize. A few days later, my husband also scolded me. He asked why I had to show my bad mood in front of my mother-in-law. I asked, did I do that? He said it was wrong to show such a bad mood over an adult's words and asked me to call my mother-in-law. When I called and apologized to her, she said, "You called quickly. I called your husband because you didn't call. You should have called before I did." I was so confused that I talked to my husband about it. I asked if we gave too little congratulatory money, or if it was wrong to transfer money to her account and should have brought cash directly. He didn't answer and just went into the room. I was stunned, and after washing up and trying to go to bed, I found my husband sleeping peacefully. My mother-in-law nitpicked like this, and my husband wanted me to apologize from her perspective. He said it was a peacekeeping move for the family, for the younger person to apologize. I didn't know what to say to my husband's words. So whenever my mother-in-law said something to me, I apologize. I thought if I apologized, my mother-in-law would calm down. But that was not the case. My mother-in-law often brought up my past mistakes. Since I had apologized for those things, I had nothing to say when she brought them up again. She often mentioned how well the daughters-in-law of her acquaintances treated their mother-in-laws. Eventually, she started to say things like, "What have you done for your in-laws?" I didn't know what I hadn't done. It wasn't about what I did wrong, just that overall, I wasn't doing well. The statement that I wasn't doing well eventually turned into me doing something wrong. My husband and I often had fights, and most of the time, it was because of my mother-in-law. My husband would say that my mother-in-law was upset because of me, and I would say that I didn't know why she was treating me that way, even though I hadn't done anything wrong, which naturally led to arguments. My mother-in-law often compared me to my sisters-in-law, who she said were doing very well. However, The sisters-in-law didn't do anything special for their own parents. They never washed dishes at the in-laws' house, nor did they cook or clean. When I saw them at the in-laws' house, all they did was eat, sit, and rummage through the refrigerator. How embarrassing must it have been for the second sister-in-law to wash the dishes occasionally. Last year, my younger sister got married. It was a cold winter day for the wedding, and although my in-laws said they didn't have to come, they came to my sister's wedding. My parents clearly thanked my in-laws for coming. But later, I found out that my in-laws had given only 50,000 won as a gift. I tried to think positively. What's important about the amount? It's a thankful thing. Just to come on a cold day. That's what I thought. But my mother-in-law had something to say to me again. About a month after my sister's wedding, my mother-in-law claimed that my parents didn't thank my in-laws at the wedding ceremony. When I said that I saw my parents thanking them, she denied it. My husband was also there when my parents thanked my in-laws. So I told him to talk to her, and after a long pause, he reluctantly agreed that he had seen it. Out of the blue, my mother-in-law changed the subject, and said it was wrong that my sister and her husband did not visit her to express their gratitude. According to her, after returning from their honeymoon, my sister and her husband should have visited to thank them for attending their wedding. She then claimed that our family didn't know basic etiquette. When I came home and asked my husband if my mother-in-law's words were too harsh, he sided with her again. When I asked him if it was wrong for my sister not to visit and thank my in-laws, he said it was obvious. Wondering if I was misunderstanding, I asked around, and everyone said my mother-in-law's claim was absurd. How could my sister go around thanking all the guests who came to her wedding? I was so angry at my mother-in-law and husband. So I confronted him again, and he said it's just how it is if the adults say so. Why live so stressfully? I couldn't find anything to say again. As these incidents continued to occur, my stress built up to the point of explosion. The reason I snapped at my husband and suggested divorce was because my mother-in-law made another absurd comment after coming to my grandmother's funeral. My grandmother passed away last October. My in-laws came to the funeral. But afterwards, she was incredibly angry at me again. She made a big deal out of the fact that I didn't give them travel expenses when they came to the funeral. She mentioned our family and said we didn't even know such etiquette. And I was so angry that I raised my voice at her. I said, "You only gave 50,000 won at both my sister's wedding and my grandmother's funeral. What else do you expect? Was the reason you insisted on coming? Even though we said you didn't have to nitpick like this?" I said. We end up fighting because she nitpicks, and my husband takes her side. When I said it's too hard for me to be a daughter-in-law in this house, she yelled, "So you're saying you want a divorce?" I said yes. And that she should know the reason for the divorce is her. Then I said, "You should live receiving filial piety from your dutiful son and daughters." This was a sarcastic comment. Since the end of last year, the relationship between the sisters-in-law and my mother-in-law had deteriorated, and they hardly visited. Then, that day, I had a big fight with my husband at home. As always, he said it was my fault. I told my husband, how could a daughter-in-law talk back to her mother-in-law like that? I said I couldn't stand it anymore. I asked him if there was anything among the things my mother-in-law pointed out that made sense. As your mother is insane and you, who only blame me without knowing that, are just like her. Let's get a divorce, I said. Then my husband just went back to his room. When he kept silent, I felt frustrated, so I started again. So I packed my bags and came to my parents' house. The next day, when my husband called me, I said again that we should get a divorce. My husband said that I caused the disturbance, so what did I do right? So I told him that I couldn't live with someone like him, who takes his crazy mother's side and blames me. I thought my husband would rush to my parents' house immediately when I called his mother a crazy woman. But he tried to placate me. He asked what about our child and said that divorce is not an option. So I told him it was creepy to think that a crazy guy like him is our child's father. A few days later, my husband called again and said he was all wrong. I said that forgiveness is not possible with an apology now. So let's get a divorce. My husband came to my parents' house, but I left with the child. My parents told my husband to get a divorce. My father said to my husband, "What did you do when your mother was acting crazy? And what did the outsiders do?" He said he can't let me go back to the house again. My husband keeps saying that he will do better. But I don't think my mind about divorce will change. I know that neither my mother-in-law nor my husband will change. How can I call someone who wants to disgrace her daughter-in-law in front of others a mother?
Seeing how she was made miserable for such unreasonable reasons, it seems she must have done well in her in-laws' house. How desperate must they have been to nitpick over such nonsensical things? How low must the intelligence of a husband who sides with such a crazy woman be?